mindset and confidence building. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I do just want to say thank you very much for everybody showing up today. A little bit of gratitude from my side. It is lunchtime, and so I really appreciate you taking the time. I know a lot of us have to go back to work, so that is great for today. My name is Alexandra Forsyth, and I'm a threat intelligence lead. So I work in the cybersecurity space, and I have done for the last 4 years. Throughout that time, I've worked with MSPs, managed service providers, startups, consultancy, and I've been doing a lot of public speaking with clients, definitely in the corporate world. So it's all about telling that story, building that rapport, building that trust. And we're going to go through some of that today. And then you have the self-development with it as well. We can go to the next slide. And just some of my key focus areas, the public speaking, always looking for solutions. I'm very strategy focused in the threat intelligence space. And as I say, I've been doing it for many years now. On to the next slide. And very, very briefly with career, study criminology, very untraditional routes into cyber. I've always had a strategy mindset, and then through to cybersecurity now. And I've already covered kind of where I've worked and what I've been doing. So we go to the next slide. So self-development, really, public speaking is just one angle of self-development. It's about reflecting on your current state. What are the challenges that you're facing, whether in your personal life, professional, and then moving through to solutions, seeing a way forward, getting yourself into the right mind frame. And we're going to focus on some techniques today. It's quite a heavy slide deck. I don't mind if we don't get through everything, but ultimately I want to make it interactive and work with you all that are attending. So what I quite like to do for the first couple of minutes is just to write down what would you do if you weren't afraid, and what would you do if the sky's the limit. And I love if there was some feedback from you. For me, as an example, I really want to move abroad in the future for my career, and I think if the sky was the limit, then I would just go now. But I know that I have reservations about moving, picking up my life and going somewhere into the unknown. It would be for my career, which is great, but ultimately I'm a little bit afraid and I'm a little bit reserved. So I'm dreaming about it, but it's all about putting the goals into action. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes just to write down a few points, and then if anybody wants to feedback what they would do if the sky was the limit. And does anybody want to share back any of their kind of limiting beliefs, any limitations they're currently feeling right now? You have a goal that you want to achieve, but you're just not sure how to do it or where to go.
We have some people typing in the chat, Alex, so
okay.
I can read them out if you can't see that when they come through. Otherwise, people can come off mute and speak. That's fine.
Yeah, I quite like it to be interactive, but like I say, I appreciate that it might be lunchtime, so not today. But no, I can't see the chat, so maybe if you can, if there's anything in there.
Yeah, I'm happy to feedback. Hi, Alex, I'm Charlotte. I'm currently a project manager for an MSP, and a lot of my role and career has been driven around presenting to clients. Majority has been remote, but if sky was the limit, I would love to be able to present to a board on site. I've done very minimal public speaking at the moment, but any number sort of above 20 really does give me anxiety. So to be able to present to a large crowd, or even, from life experience, being able to, do a speech at a wedding, for example, I think I'd absolutely crumble at the moment. So if sky was the limit, I'd love to be able to have the confidence to present in my career and in life just to a big crowd without having that anxiety feeling.
What do you think it is about the anxiety what are the emotions and the feelings that are coming up for you?
I think a lot of it just comes from being nervous that I'm going to say the wrong thing or waffle, and end up having lots of filler words, and not come across confident.
Okay.
Public speaking in a large crowd makes my heart race. I start sweating. It is really not a nice experience. So it'd be really good to be so confident that that's not even something I feel, and actually I'm confident and I'm excited to present and get my message out, if you see what I mean.
No, definitely. Some feedback from me when I first started public speaking, I was exactly the same. I was so nervous. I would get sweaty. I mean, I have anxiety anyway, so that would naturally just be exacerbated through the public speaking. It would just get worse and worse the bigger the crowd. A couple of tips for me in the beginning, even if I didn't have a public speaking engagement, preparing a script or preparing a little speech just on the fly and actually practicing that. You don't have to do it every day, but once or twice a week. And like I say, even if you don't have that engagement ready, if it was a wedding or if it was something relating to work, you could write out 2 or 3 sections and just practice what you'd like to say. And then that gets you feeling more confident, even if it is just on your own, in your bedroom or in an office space. It doesn't necessarily have to be with an audience to begin with. And then over time, you can speak in front of 10 people, 20, 30, 40, and it just goes up, up, and up. But in the beginning, to kind of get you feeling more motivated and excited to present, as you say, you could always just start on your own and write out what you'd like to say.
Thank you. Really appreciate that. It's really great advice.
And would anybody else like to share?
Somebody in the chat has mentioned visa limitations to applying abroad and requiring more experience to be able to pitch myself ahead to be chosen. Say as the overseas worker in the UK. There's limitations on what they can, what they think they can achieve because of that.
So visa limitations to applying abroad and requiring more experience to be able to pitch myself ahead to being chosen. So applying for roles abroad, currently based in the UK, I presume. Okay. I would definitely say when I've been coaching kind of early careers and juniors, having a look at the job spec, having a look at the requirements, I know there are visa limitations. I probably have to have a bit more of a deep dive into this because I've had questions from international students a lot, and they're suffering with limitations with companies having their own policies and processes to go through. Sometimes you can have that pitch and you can be ready to present yourself to the company, but in terms of the visa limitations, it may not necessarily come down to how you're presenting, it may be down to the company itself. But let me have a think about that throughout, and then maybe we can touch base on it at the end. Yeah. And another 2-minute activity before we kind of dive into the other slide. So what are your superpowers? Yeah. So what are your
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
There was one more thing, like, when it comes to, public speaking, or even like, being in the front line is also, yes, I have, like, for example, for me, like, yes, I have achieved like, great success in my career. But however, many a times I feel that I was quite lucky. I think that I was, it was just the luck, or I was there at that time, and that is the reason I got this. And I always feel that there could be people who could, do better than me many a times. And that also, always is, I don't know whether it is kind of a syndrome or something like that, but I always feel that, oh, maybe someone could do it better, and I'm just lucky, so I should be grateful, rather than just being, outspoken about any issues. So that is also many a times it holds me back by, putting my views across very strongly.
There's an example that I can give which kind of matches what you're saying. So I went to a leadership event a couple of weeks ago and I didn't feel like I deserved to be in the room. There are a lot of people there more accomplished than myself. I felt
Mm.
quite intimidated. I didn't really want to speak up at the beginning, but I was messaging a friend at the time and they said, you deserve to be there. You've got the credentials, you've got the experience, whether or not you match theirs entirely, it doesn't matter. You have something to say. So for yourself, it's remaining humble, but also, again, with your superpower, there are certain reasons why you are in the rooms that you're in, why you've accomplished so much, why you've succeeded. You deserve it. And you have to kind of take a minute to say, well, I want this and I've worked really hard, so why not? And it's just giving yourself that kind of oomph sometimes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And then obviously it brings me on to the superpower. So I know that a few of you in the room have said that you don't feel as confident with the public speaking, makes you feel a little bit anxious and you want to get better, but you're not sure how. I'd actually quite like to take a minute just for you to realize, what are you good at? What are your superpowers and what do you like doing in the workplace or outside of it? Because we tend to focus on a lot of the negatives with ourselves. I do it. I have very high standards and I don't meet them all the time. And it's very easy for me to kind of walk away even from a public speaking engagement and say to myself, well, that was crap and I didn't enjoy it and I didn't do it very well. But actually taking that minute to say, I am good at X, Y, and Z, and then I can apply that. So just taking a minute to kind of write that down. And then again, with the feedback, I'd love to hear a few examples. Okay, would anybody like to feedback their superpowers?
Yeah, I don't mind going.
Cool.
So I guess for context, I'm a product owner, so I do a lot of technical specifications. And one thing I am quite good at is I'm very like detail orientated about the details of requirements and specifications and how we're going to get from A to B, which I find very useful in my current job.
Mm-hmm. And what's really nice about that is, depending on who you're presenting to in the workplace, it could be focusing on the high level trends. So just giving a broad overview of what you're doing, but having that technical, detailed oriented mindset means that when you are asked questions, you can answer them on the fly. So that's actually a bonus.
Yeah, and that's one thing I get a bit nervous about. If someone asks me a question and I don't know the answer, it makes me feel a bit stupid sometimes.
Okay. And when you're being asked questions, is it online or is it in person? Do you tend to go to a lot of meetings through Teams? What's the environment like?
It would generally be over Teams, quite a remote workforce at the moment, and a lot of the people that I present to are quite senior within my business. So I don't think they're trying to trip me up or anything. They just want to know. But sometimes I feel a bit like, oh, I feel like I should have known that. But I don't think it. I think it's. I also would say it's fine to just say, oh, I don't know. Can I come back to you?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to recommend. Sometimes I've said, let's take this offline and I'll go away and I'll find the answer and then come back. Just give me a second or give me an hour and then we can have another meeting. So don't be afraid to do that. Amazing. Would anybody else like to share? Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Thank you for everyone that did share. Oh, I'll just read out the message in the chat. So I'm confident with seeking and taking feedback and working with it, as it's quite limiting to work solo. It can be overwhelming at times, but I try and keep at it anyway. So in terms of the feedback, you feel that it might be quite overwhelming, but there is a slide that I have in the deck where building that resilience up in terms of the feedback, not taking it personally, definitely in a workplace setting, even personally through friends and family, the feedback that you're getting, it's not a reflection on your abilities. It might just be the project that you're doing. There's a tight deadline, it needs to be completed. This is the requirement, the expectations, and then just taking that feedback and trying to get into a bit more of a business mindset, I would say, just focusing on whether it's a client or the business, the organization itself. So it's a big one that I've had to learn over the years, not taking anything kind of to heart. It's just feedback is feedback, but great to see that you're taking it anyway. Okay, and I just wanted to pop this slide up. So the presentation coach by Graham Davies, he's on LinkedIn and he always shares some fantastic tips for presenting. This just gives you a big rundown of what you can do beforehand, during, and then after the presentation. Some of the recommendations have focused on practicing but not overdoing it, having a slide deck but not relying on it too much, having your key points with you at all times. If you want cue cards when you're up there or notes, don't be afraid to do that. So it really just gives you a drill down, and I've thoroughly enjoyed reading that book over the last few months. And then Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg is a book that I'm currently reading now, and it's talking about leadership and being ambitious and not being afraid to speak up and having that confidence. A few of the pointers that people have mentioned today, wanting more confidence through the public speaking. So reading about it, listening to podcasts, that can instill a level of confidence in you and get you feeling motivated and excited. And then what does self-development mean? So today we're obviously talking about the public speaking mindset, confidence element, but it really comes from within when you're doing public speaking. It's something I've had to learn over the years. The confidence comes with practice over time. I've delivered hundreds of engagements now, but right at the beginning I used to just be so nervous, especially at work. I can totally relate to what everyone is saying in terms of when you're talking to the high stake people, the seniors, they're responsible for the budget, they're responsible for programs, and you need to get them on side. You need to build that trust. It can feel all encompassing when you're going into those meetings. You want to make sure you get everything out there, and even when you're working with your teams as well, you want to come across as the big leader. But ultimately that self-development, it really does kind of start with you. So those couple of exercises that we did at the beginning, I wanted to pull out, well, what are your superpowers? What are you passionate about? What are you excited about? And then what are your limitations? Do you need more training? Do you need to upskill in certain areas relating to work outside of that public speaking sphere? And then when you do the public speaking, you feel more confident going into it. So it starts with that reflection, that prioritization, thinking, well, what are my limitations in terms of my self-development? Am I growing at work? Am I growing at my personal life? And then prioritizing the next steps, whether that's training, upskilling, being promoted, pivoting to another career, whatever it might be. It's getting down your goals, first of all, and that could just be one or two different goals that you want to reach, and then putting that plan into action. And then mindset, resilience, and feedback come after that. So that comment that I made about the feedback, it builds resilience. It really does. Not taking anything personally that anybody says, whether in a team environment, whether in a meeting with senior stakeholders, just knowing that the mission and the goal is the business. Nothing else kind of matters at that point in time. The questions that they're asking you is for the business, and then the solution again is all about the business. So it's that resilient mindset, being optimistic and remaining open to other suggestions as well as your own. Naturally, that will help you build your confidence, and then pushing that through with the public speaking. This is something that I do before I do any type of public speaking engagement. So it's 4 steps, and they might seem a little bit trivial. Oh, I've done this before, but I do this before, like I say, every public speaking engagement, I just like to pause. Sometimes if I'm traveling on location, I'll try and get to the venue early. If it was in a workplace setting, such as you've mentioned in the call, maybe going to the office a little bit earlier, going to the room, just standing there with your slides, whatever you're presenting, being a bit silent with yourself. Or how do I want to come across today? If it was through a webinar and it was online, 5 or 10 minutes before, just sitting there and reflecting on what you're about to do, pausing, being present and having that moment to yourself, trying to relax. I know you can feel anxious and I know you can feel, oh gosh, I've got to do this, but kind of replacing the anxious feelings with excitement. It's really hard to do. The butterflies can be all encompassing. But like I said, taking that moment to yourself will really help. And I'm sure a number of you are already doing this as well. If it was in person, I would, as part of taking that moment, just make eye contact with a few people in the audience. Again, that can be terrifying. And I've had many moments where I've made eye contact and I haven't received the response that I wanted, but you've got to keep pushing through that and welcome them into your space. So I try and stand closer to the audience and not rely so much on my slides, but building that up over time. So if you wanted to just stand with your slides and present at the beginning, that's fine, but moving yourself towards the audience. Can't necessarily do it in a webinar Teams environment, but definitely as you get to that in person, just welcoming them in, realizing that they're just people sat there, they're interested in what you have to say, the knowledge that you're bringing across, and then that will allow you to connect a little bit more. And also, one thing I found, going back to the feedback, I used to really hate the Q&A at the end of a presentation when people would ask me questions and I'd have to answer them. I've gotten a lot better at it now, and I actually champion and welcome in the questions because it allows me to think creatively. I get some of my most creative ideas from others when they're asking me questions and going away and researching and answering them. So over time, building that level of resilience as well. And the next slide. Just some market trends. I just wanted to throw this in. Self-improvement has skyrocketed since COVID. There's so many avenues of self-development and self-improvement, and I've got a slide at the end with a couple of communities for public speaking. But you can have a coach online, a mentor. London, I'm not sure where everybody's based today, but some of the big cities, London, Liverpool, Manchester, they have a host of Toastmasters, public speaking, but also just the self-development networking events. You can go and meet like-minded individuals, and I have a couple of resources that I'll share out as well. But it's really booming, definitely in the professional and personal space. That's what we're seeing right now, and people are outreaching, they're looking for others, they want connection, and they want to build up their confidence as well. And I think it's becoming more apparent, definitely in the professional setting. We've got millennials and Gen Z, quite young, and they're looking for ways to upskill. So it comes down to us, but also thinking about the workplace. If you're not receiving the training and the upskilling, say in public speaking, it could be that you put forward a plan. This is what I'd actually like to do. This is a course that I've seen online. Can I receive the budget to actually take that course? So it could be actually you outreaching as well with your company saying, well, this is what I'd like to see to help us improve. And the next slide. Self-development through public speaking. So we had a conversation at the beginning of the call and wanting to understand different ways that you can make an impact. These are some of the areas that I've used my public speaking, so client negotiation, pitching, speaking at meetings, in my personal life as well. It's grown and grown over the years. So these are just some ways that you can make an impression. I wanted to just pause and reflect here. I'm happy to keep going, but I just wanted to see if anybody has any questions. What we will be going through next is kind of the soft and hard skills, and I'll be giving some examples as well. Yes,
Natalie,
welcome
yeah.
to speak.
Hi, sorry, I'm not on camera. I'm being antisocial. Just a quick question on the, because I've been working a lot on public speaking and my confidence and stuff like that. But the biggest thing for me is less so around the confidence of actually doing the public speaking and more around the putting yourself forward for it. So is there any
Okay.
tips you've got on that front of where to find avenues to do more public speaking and ways in which to put yourself forward?
So outside of kind of the corporate world, I'm partnered with educational institutions. So some of the public speaking I do is with universities and schools. So I'll actually go in and just talk about my career to students within the same bracket of cybersecurity threat intelligence. That's a really good starting point because the audience size tends to only be, I'd say, no more than 30 students at a time. It might differ depending on the industry, but that's a really good starting point, I would say. A couple of the resources at the end of the slide deck, Toastmasters was mentioned at the beginning. I would advocate for that. Definitely if you're starting out wanting to be within an intimate small group, again, no more than 30, 40 people attend, and they break it down by activities. At the end, you get to go up and deliver a talk on a specific topic that you want to. So that's another way to kind of introduce you out, and also connecting with others, networking.
Yeah, I'm not a big networking fan. Thank you though. The school things sounds like a good shout, so thank you. And I suppose
it really, yeah, it really is. I mean, contacting the schools or universities, but depending on where you're working, do they have any avenues for public speaking internally, or are they partnered with any kind of companies you could maybe get involved in?
No, I mean I'm not in work at the moment, but where I just left, I did have some opportunities to do that. But it's
Okay.
I'm thinking more outside of what you would do on a workspace, in your actual workplace, and it's expanding that a little bit further than just being where you work. But I did just sign up to a STEM ambassadors thing, so that your suggestion's a good one.
No,
definitely
with this. Yeah, definitely with the STEM. I mean, for the cybersecurity, I'm the same as you. I'm an ambassador for a few different communities as well, networks. So again, that might be an alternative route if you wanted to do something outside of work, becoming an ambassador. Again, great for the networking, but also to practice your public speaking. But the mentoring route as well, that comes under the ambassador umbrella.
Okay, thank you.
That's okay. I tend to find with public speaking, it's all about exposure. It's just practice, practice, practice. I've got a slide later on where I say, even in your personal life, I practice just speaking to anybody every day. And again, you just build that kind of mental resilience. If somebody didn't want to talk to me, that's fine. But it is just practice, practice, practice. Can't emphasize that enough.
Thanks.
Okay, that's okay. And on to the next slide. So some of the soft skills I would say the soft skills with public speaking. So that's storytelling, and definitely for a few of you on the call who mentioned wanting to talk to the seniors, wanting to talk to the stakeholders, even just in your teams through the business environment. It's that storytelling. You've got the data, you've got the trends, you've got the hard facts, you're really good at your roles, you know what you've got to say, but what's that key story? What's that message that you want to get across? If it's budgeting, if it's wanting to build a program, even if it's within cybersecurity, sometimes for me, it was just revealing the high level trends to a client, what's happening in the cybersecurity space, what are the recommendations I can offer out to the organization to protect their networks, to protect themselves from cybercrime activity. So it's all about solutions for me. So the story would be the beginning, middle, and end. And I have a slide later on where we'll go through how you can position yourself. But and as I say, when you're taking that step back before you do a public speaking engagement, it's a good opportunity for you to sit there and say, what's the message? What's the story that I want to get across? I don't need to say absolutely everything in that meeting. I can if I want to, and I've got my cue cards next to me, that's fine. But just pulling out those key nuggets, the 2 or 3 key points, it doesn't need to be any more than that. And sometimes in a presentation, that's what you can start with. So don't be hesitant when you're introducing yourself to say, these are the key points that I'm going to get across today. This is what I'll be talking about. And you just throw it out there straight away. And then everything after that is the story. That's where you can bring in the use cases. You can bring in the hard facts as well. It's just all about taking people with you wherever you're going, because sometimes the listeners, they won't know what you're going to say next, and they won't know how you want to come across. So you really have to not handhold them, but you really have to bring them along with you, and that can take time. But as I say, 2 or 3 key points before you're presenting this is what I must say in my presentation and my public speaking engagement, and then everything after that is a trickle down effect. That's the key story. And that's where the empathy and consistency comes in. I've said it in this webinar already, it's practice, 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 it's repetition. So if you are, thank you very much, Jenny. So if you are, it's practice, practice, practice. So if you are saying your key points at the beginning of the presentation, say them at the end as well. So round up, because whatever's been said might not be remembered. So it's constantly repetition with your public speaking, but just having that empathy and coming into it with a little bit of emotion, depending on what industry you're in, depending on what your public speaking engagement is about. If you wanted to come across as vulnerable and share some personal stories, maybe not necessarily in a workplace environment with your seniors if you didn't want to, but if you were at a wedding, if you were giving that speech, you could bring in those personal stories. And again, it takes the audience with you. It's all about captivating them and just bringing them along and seeing them as human beings as well. And that will also help when you think about building your confidence, just seeing them as people, again, with those key stakeholders, with those seniors in the room. It's just titles to a certain extent. I know that they're responsible and they can help drive whatever it is that you want to get across, but ultimately they're human beings as well. So we have to treat them as such. On to the next slide. So as I was saying a little bit earlier on, treating every day as a self-development forum, really, it can be easier said than done. I think over the last 12 months, I really honed this. I do speak to people everywhere all the time when I'm out, if it's on the tube, or give somebody a smile in London, or sometimes people have spoken to me on the bus and I've just chatted with them for an hour, family gatherings with friends, ordering. I treat every interaction I have as an opportunity for me to practice. And as I was saying at the beginning, if you weren't comfortable enough to do that, practicing on your own, so writing down 2 or 3 sections, paragraphs, something, a key message that you'd like to get across, just practicing it to yourself in front of the mirror, recording, that will help with your confidence. And then over time, it will just happen. And it's, again, easier said than done, but you will just see the progress. Sometimes you might not even see it and you think a year later, God, I can just talk to anybody and I feel confident, I feel excited, and I've gotten to a point where still a little bit nervous when I do a public speaking, but ultimately I'm excited and ready to go. So treating that and introducing it to other areas of your life, whether personal or professional, can really help, but not going too overboard. And you don't need to speak to absolutely everybody that you come across, but just trying where you can. And everybody has a story. So when we come on to the next slide, we can see what we'll do in terms of breaking that out. So beginning, middle and end, it seems easier, again, easier said than done, but really what you can do with the public speaking is breaking it up. So what I'd like to do in my presentations for threat intelligence or cybersecurity, I have the beginning, middle and end. So I'm focusing on who am I, my introduction. What is the topic that I'll be discussing today? So when I said before about your 2 or 3 key points that you're rounding up with, you can shoot them out at the beginning. These are the solutions, this is how it's going to end. You can start with that, because then the audience isn't nervous or scared by the end. They've received everything that you're going to talk about, and ultimately just thinking, why does the audience need to know what I'm about to say? What is the importance of that to them? And having that purpose statement there, and then you go and you would have that QA as well. So it's all about recapturing the attention. And on to the next slide. And then some of the hard skills going through public speaking, I think they're hard skills because you really have to hone these over time. So that stage presence, everybody's stage presence will be different, and it is all about working that out through doing more and more public speaking. So for me, I have a lot of facial expressions. I use my hands a lot. I don't tend to move around the room on webinars, and when you're doing online public speaking, you're just in one place. So I find it easier just to be able to use my hands. You see a lot of it in my face, and that's great. In person, I do just stand in one place. So it's figuring out, well, who are you as a public speaker, and what interactions do you want to have with the audience? It's a hard skill because you'll only know that the more and more you're exposed to the public speaking, and the more and more over time that you do it. And a hard skill, again, I feel, is the audience. Sometimes when I give them public speaking engagements, I can come across as too technical. I can see that on the audience face, so then I need to retract. And it's something that you will learn over time, being able to interpret how the audience is feeling about what you're saying, and then taking that into account on the fly in the moment, and being able to restructure what you're saying and then going on to the next point. That can be quite a hard skill to do, but over time you will get more and more used to that. And it's just, again, all about thinking about the journey. Where do you want the audience to go with you, and that planning and execution. So the practice, having your slides ready, knowing where you're going for the engagement, and then just never underestimating the quality of your work. So making sure that you research what you're about to talk about and that you are the expert in the field, I think is most important. But over time, you really will be able to work that out. And so I wanted to shoot it out to you again as one of the last exercises, but do you use any of these soft and hard skills right now? Do you feel that, I know you have room for improvement, and a lot of you have mentioned that confidence as well, but just fire shooting it out to see if you have any soft and hard skills that you use. Happy for anybody to jump in, and if there isn't anyone, then that's no problem. You can always reach out after.
Alex, I think the thing for me on this is that I feel like I struggle more when it's in the moment or off the cuff, because I am conscious of scenarios where I'm halfway through a sentence and then my brain just hides the rest of the sentence, and I struggle to remember where I'm going with stuff. So I know, like, generally presenting, or I don't do a lot of it in my day-to-day role, so I appreciate this practice that's needed there, but I don't I'm aware that I think the biggest failures are not prepping enough to be confident. But yeah, primarily for me, it's the day-to-day spontaneous stuff where it's not a case of having pulled a pack together. It's a case of, you know, on the spot presenting something and then just losing your thread halfway through. Are there any ways to combat that?
So there is. What I would say, if you're losing your train of thought in the moment, just pause. And that can be a little bit more anxiety inducing. I've had that where I just pause because I don't know where I'm going with what I'm about to say. But sometimes just taking 2 or 3 seconds, it can feel longer in the moment, but just pausing for a second. And if you can remember the previous point that you've just made, say it again. And then it might trigger something in your mind to get you to the next step. If it doesn't, and you find that pausing isn't enough, you've recounted your previous point, it's still not enough, what I would suggest is moving on to the next point. And if you don't have that next point, it does go back to sometimes just prepping and having just the 2 or 3 key points that you can pull out. But hopefully by pausing for a couple of seconds, recounting the previous point, and then just moving straight on, even if it's moving on to the next slide, I would suggest doing it, and then you can come back and you might find 2 or 3 slides later you remember, and you think, oh, I remember that point, scribble it down. I just want to go back to that slide because I'd like to recount something. And you don't need to say I've forgotten, but you can just say I want to go back to that slide. So hopefully those 2 or 3 points might help you.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's all right. And some communities, so the Toastmasters has already been mentioned. The other two, the Moth it's a lovely community. They are based in London and other cities as well. But the idea is you go and it's similar to stand-up. You just go and tell a story. So you have about 10 minutes and you can put your name into a hat. They pull it out. So you're not guaranteed that you can do the public speaking, but you just go up there and tell a story. And some of them that I've listened to are very vulnerable, very personal. It doesn't need to be work related. It can be if you want, but the idea is it's practice for you, and it is in front of a larger audience, around 50 to 60 people. But in the beginning, if you wanted to just attend and listen, that's what I did in the beginning. I think it's fantastic, and it's a shame that I'd only come across it a couple of months ago. And it's also a lovely opportunity to meet other people as well. And then Fuck Up Nights is another community as well, which is public speaking oriented. I would say it's a step up from the Moth. So actually, if you wanted to begin at the Toastmasters phase, go to Moth and then end at Fuck Up. That's quite a nice round up there. Apologies for swearing it as well, but it's the only way I can say the name. But that is the idea of the community. But there are tons others. If you only want to go to a networking event about public speaking, you're not interested in actually starting, there are tons and tons out there. I will see if I can dig some out for you as well in terms of resources at the end. And then ultimately I wanted to put this slide in because it seems to be a hot trend and a topic at the minute, burnout. So when it comes to the public speaking, not doing too much too soon. So like I say, if you're anxious and nervous about speaking in front of an audience, whether it's 10, 20, 30 people, can just start solo. And if you don't have a public speaking engagement to start with at all, writing down what you'd actually like to say in a couple of different scenarios, practicing by yourself, and then moving on to the next phase. Going back to one of the earlier slides that I mentioned, prioritization, reflection, so always checking in with yourself. But it would be interesting for a few of you in the workplace setting, maybe talking to your team members. Is anybody else wanting to get a bit better at public speaking, and could you start a group and practice with each other? That actually might be a good route to go down, so you don't feel alone and you don't feel like you're having to do everything solo. So there are a couple of different options there. And then the conclusion, so public speaking confidence and mindset, as I said in the beginning, it really comes down to self-development. So just working out what are your goals with the public speaking, right through to the largest audience you'd like to present in front of, potentially constantly checking in with yourself, constantly reflecting, reaching out to others. So this webinar has been fantastic today because you've been able to ask questions, I've been able to answer them, continuing to do that and go to further webinars, getting involved in communities as well, whether that's through an ambassador route, whether that's inside the workplace that you're currently with. It's all about finding opportunities, but at a steady pace. And again, working out the soft and hard skills, really important as well. But thinking ultimately the storytelling arc, what is the key message that you want to get across? But as I mentioned to Rebecca, if you are struggling a little bit when you're giving any kind of engagement, having that pause before you give the engagement, during, recounting what you're about to say, moving on to the next point, and then you can always come back. You can always say your key message again if you think you've forgotten it. And I think that is the roundup for today. Really want to say thank you so much for being interactive. It's been fantastic. I think you're all fantastic individuals, and I want you to remember that public speaking it's such a skill to have, and I'm so grateful that you've attended the webinar and that you are thinking about getting more confident. You all have it within you, and it's only up from here, really. But do reach out if you have any other questions. I'd be happy to answer anything. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. I will share, when I share the recording of this in Mighty, I'll put all of the links to the books you recommended and the meetups recommended, as well as these QR codes, so that everybody can get access to the resources that you suggested post the event. Well, thank you for your time, really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks everyone that took the time out of their lunch break today to attend. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.